Okay, right. Shall I just
Do your thing.
do my thing?
Awaken the podcasting beast within.
Yeah, because I really look like a podcasting beast right now.
Well, the beauty of being a podcasting beast is that you don't look like anything. You just sound like one.
Hello, and welcome back to Is It Just Us? If you're new here, hi, I'm Emily.
I'm James.
And this is the podcast where we talk about all of those topics where quite often you've probably been sat there thinking, is it just me that thinks this way? We're here to tell you, hopefully not, that this week it may just be us.
Well,
as always.
I'm not sure. It possibly might be just me, although probably not as well. We sit at two different ends of this spectrum, I think.
I mean, you say that, but I don't feel like that right now.
True. Today is a bad example.
Today is a very bad example.
I mean, today, did we have many life updates, really? Double promotions?
Yeah, but that's not until like that. That's like a really long. Well, yours is like now. Mine's like kind of like a long ongoing thing.
Yeah. Things are going well for us, at least.
Yeah, work's going well. It's busy, you know.
We are very, very busy.
But then again, I think that's just like every adult
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
is busy.
Yeah, that is quite true.
You know, when you're in full-time work, when you're not busy, really.
Yeah, that's fair. But I've now got an increase in hours, an extra hour every day, which doesn't sound like much, but it's when in the morning you can't just do that thing, you know, where you just sit around and you're like, yeah, it's nice to sit down.
Yeah, I miss just being really lazy in the mornings, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll have to make the most of it over the weekend.
Yeah, please. Please.
Especially on Sunday.
I think my body needs it.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, also, you have rejoined the world of exercise this week.
Yeah.
Which is that's actually the biggest update I think we have, is that Emily now goes to the gym again.
Yeah, and we say it again because, like, when we were at uni, I did go to the gym. Like, that's how I got through my last year at uni. But when I left uni, I stopped. And now I'm taking it back up. And it's very painful. I ache. A lot.
You ache.
I ache. That's not going to make any sense to anyone else.
Because everyone else just says the word ache like a normal person.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, should we actually just explain what this week's topic is?
Sure.
Because I feel like we do this quite often where we'll keep saying, oh yeah, this week's topic, and then people are like, well, what is it?
That's the beauty of how we do things. I mean, there's so much more to give on you joining the gym.
True. If you want another podcast on like health and fitness, because we did vaguely touch on it ages and ages ago. If you want like an updated version or something like that, let us know.
Because I'm actually doing different things now, exercise-wise.
Yeah.
And anyone who's interested in like a bit of gym stuff, I would never profess to be an expert on anything. All I have is my own experiences, but I've changed up what I do, and it's different and made a difference.
Yeah.
So there's always something to learn.
Yeah, definitely. But on that note...
On that bombshell.
I don't know if that's copyrighted. Shall we get into this week's topic?
Yep.
Okay. So this week we thought it would be an interesting one to talk about the topic of conversation.
So I know that, especially at the moment, especially on the internet, there's this great generational divide thing. Although, to be fair...
Divide thing?
Yeah, so, the whole boomer millennial thing.
Yeah.
And, there's this... I know it's you shouldn't generalise these things, but generally older people are just like, oh yeah, young people can't do all these things, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And you hear this criticism banded around quite a lot, that we spend too much time on devices or like social media, and it means we're lacking like social skills to do stuff, and we don't like picking up the phone, all that kind of stuff, which has its truths in part.
Yeah.
But I sometimes think, maybe I'm not actually that good at making conversation or talking to people.
I mean, I think you're better than you give yourself credit for.
Possibly.
But I think, obviously, conversation skills, I think there's some sort of spectrum. Some people are really up there and they can literally talk to anyone, anytime about anything. And then there's other people who can't talk to a doorknob.
Why would you talk to a doorknob?
I don't know. It's an inanimate object that doesn't need conversation skills.
Right.
So that is my scale.
Okay. Sure.
I don't feel like I'm a good example of conversation skills right now because I'm like tired and kind of half ill. And
But you see, I normally think you're very good at making conversation with people. Like, I think I'm pretty bad
Really?
at it. Yeah. See, this is what I mean. Like, you find that kind of shocking, and I don't know. I think a lot of young people think of them as not being able to talk to people in the same way, or like we underestimate our own ability to talk to people. But I'm not sure really how relevant that is as a generational thing, because like if you look, I've read a few articles and stuff, and they say throughout history, older people moaning about younger people and younger people moaning about older people has happened in every generation pretty much ever since like the ancient Greeks.
yeah.
So I think it's just a fact of human existence that the age gap is so large and society does change in 30 years that we're always going to find stuff to moan about.
Yeah.
At the moment, yeah, we seem to get moaned at for not being able to do basic things like talk to other human beings. But
Yeah.
it's probably not strictly true. We have our own ways of communicating.
Yeah, I guess like obviously like times have changed and obviously the way we communicate has now changed. Like letters, obviously when our parents were younger, the way you wanted to talk to a friend that was ages away, you'd write them a letter. Whereas I can't tell you the last time I wrote a letter.
You FaceTime them.
And I need to sneeze. No, it's not coming.
Disappointing.
That's very disappointing.
The great mystery will be, will Simon edit that out, or will we just have that great disappointment sitting in our podcast?
Who even knows?
But yeah, I mean, communication does change over the years. I think it's quite easy to romanticize like older forms of communication, like the letter. But now we have different ways of doing things. It's like language; it does evolve. So I saw this really interesting thing online where it said some of the ways that we text each other, as in like younger people, we do it in a really different way to older people. So I know I've had it before. Like my mum has texted me stuff with full stops at the end of a text. And we actually normally read into that, oh, well, that's a bit blunt because there's this full stop, whereas they just think it's good grammar.
I mean, oh yeah, okay. So I think I'm somewhere in between because I still use normal punctuation in my texts.
Yeah, sometimes I think you're being quite blunt with me.
No, but that's just me.
Especially when if it's like a single word like yeah and you have a full stop, I'm like, oh.
No, because like it's also a case of like, okay, so I'm one of those people that I will still spell properly in a text. I'm never going to be one of those people that sends you as
No.
in the letter U. Or,
That said, I actually think older people are worse at that these days than younger people are.
yeah.
Apart from like the 12-year-olds, but they don't really count because
Yeah.
they're not really people yet.
Be careful with that. But obviously I do love, like I wouldn't say love. Okay, that's a bit too much
Too
of a
strong?
but I do like to use proper grammar and spelling in my text. I don't know whether or not it's just because obviously I did a degree in English, so it's almost instilled in me to use proper grammar and spelling. But at the same time, sometimes I feel like it changes the whole like feel of the message.
Yes, agreed.
Because like, you know, read a text that doesn't have any punctuation or anything in it. You're like, might mean one thing to you, but then you put the punctuation in, it suddenly means another thing.
I don't know, the way we punctuate we definitely read different stuff into it.
Yeah. But I also think, obviously, because we've all grown up with instant messaging and text messaging, it now has changed the way that we communicate in person,
Possibly, yeah.
which I think is kind of like the bulk point of this podcast.
Yes, we've been off topic a little bit, as we'd like to do.
We love to be off topic.
But yeah, the main thing was talking in person, really.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Which is where the differences between us, I think, are more obvious.
Again, I don't think I'm a really good example right this second because I'm sat in bed sounding croaky now and not being able to think properly. But I get what you mean.
Like, I think some people think I talk quite. Well, I do talk quite a lot.
You do.
I ramble quite aggressively, which is something I inherit from my granddad. Thankfully, I think my stories are slightly more interesting than his, although I might be lying. But that said,
And also, you'll get to the age where you've forgotten you've told the story about 6 times already.
I do that anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, to be fair, thinking back to my granddad's stories, mine are definitely more interesting, even if only marginally. His were just that dull. Where was I going with this? So yeah, I might say a lot in terms of words, but I don't think I'm very good at conversation. I think I'm good at talking, but bad at conversation. So if I'm talking to someone, especially if it's like someone I don't know, or even people I do know, to be honest, I do struggle to have this back and forth interaction with them. I'd much rather just go off on one on myself. By myself.
Yeah, I think that one of the main things I've learned about the art of conversation is always remember it is a two-way street. So it's a bit like, I think I've heard someone sort of compare it to, imagine you've got a dance partner. It's half you and half them. So if you have a really crap dance partner, then you're not going to do very well, okay? So if you have a really bad conversation partner, the conversation's not going to be really flowing.
Like when you talk to me and you keep saying stuff and I just ignore it and talk about something else.
I mean, obviously I don't know what you're like with other people. But so I would normally say one of the main things to remember when you're, say, okay, you're meeting someone new. One of the main things to make sure a conversation is flowing is to listen and ask questions.
Asking questions is the big one.
Those are the two main things I would say.
I've had to learn to be really good at doing that. And I'm still not very good at it, but I try. Because I think it was probably when I was like 16, 17, I realized that people who are actually good at talking, like having conversation, asked me a lot of questions. And when they asked me questions, I was like, oh yeah, this is a good conversation. And that's because it enabled me to just talk about myself, which is what I do anyway. But they were really good at it. So when I meet new people now, like at work, I try to ask questions and get things going, get them talking about themselves.
That's a really good thing to remember is general human nature is we love talking about ourselves. Most people, obviously again, I'm generalizing here, but most people enjoy talking about themselves because it's what they know.
And they talk about things they find interesting.
Yes, exactly. So if you ask them questions about themselves, they then are talking about a topic that only they know a lot about, so it instantly puts them at ease. And again, you don't want a conversation partner who's really tight up and doesn't want to to actually talk, otherwise you're going to be sat there like a lemon. So it's the whole point of remembering, yes, okay, you need to ask them questions. And okay, so you do have a nervous conversation partner, just keep asking them questions about, their families or what they do for a job or, have they gone on holiday recently? And hopefully if you have a good conversation partner, they pick up on the cues and ask you the same questions back.
Yeah.
And then it's a flow.
Yeah. Whereas I start way too many conversations where they're not really conversation starters. I start with so I found out this cool thing the other day. Or this is really interesting. Or here's a really cool fact. And yeah.
Do you actually?
Yeah, I do that to you all the time.
Yeah, but I don't feel like I count now. So we live together.
That is generally what, even with my family and stuff, anyone, I will just, if I can't think of something to say, I'll be think of something that I find interesting. It just pops into my head, because I'm always thinking of weird things. So this is something that I found out the other day, which is pretty cool. Whereas I'm not as good at so how was your weekend? All that kind of stuff. I had to train myself to ask people how their weekend was. I remember when I first met you, you always asked me how my weekend was, and I was like, what's this? Is this conversation? So yeah, I mean, it's just small things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people, especially when they're meeting new people or they're starting a new conversation, they automatically get very nervous. And I kind of get why, because obviously you're meeting someone new and you're having to put yourself out there. But again, if you ask questions that maybe you feel like you could answer in turn, so obviously, hey James, how are you? That's a really simple conversation starter. And then because you might say,
all right.
Great.
Not bad.
But then surely if you were good at conversation, you would be like,
so I found a really cool fact the other day.
How are you back? You're not helping me here. You need to help me. The
reason Emily is so good at conversation is because she does have a rubbish conversation partner in me.
No, you're not rubbish. It's just, it's early in the morning.
Yeah, I do. It does take, I have to get a lot out of my system before I'm actually good at conversation.
I understand that.
I'm too passionate about weird things I find interesting.
Yeah, but I guess this whole podcast is just talking generally.
Yeah, that is true.
We're not getting really, really deep into James's conversation skills.
Just analyse my conversation skills now. Teach me your ways. But this is what I mean. When I say we sit at different ends of the spectrum, I feel like making conversation comes a bit more naturally to you. Obviously, it's all these skills are learnt.
Yeah, I was going to say, you say that. I think it's more a case of I've learned to stick myself in situations where I've had to learn.
Yeah.
So obviously my job, I'm in customer services at the moment. I have to be good at communicating. I have to be able to talk to people on the phone. Otherwise, what's the point of my job? Back in the UK, I've done PR. Again, you have to be good at communicating in PR because the whole point of PR is communications.
Yeah.
So I think it's a case of those are the jobs I've done, and that's sort of taught me skills about conversation.
Yeah, both most of what I've done is generally based on communicating more like ideas to people. So you actually do talk at them,
Yeah.
which hasn't really taught me much in terms of like small talk and things. But yeah, and I think the best conversationalist I've actually spoken to is your granddad.
Oh, my granddad's great.
And that's, I mean, conversationalist as well, because he's got the classic granddad thing where he does have the stories.
Interesting stories.
They are interesting stories. I mean, my granddad had that, but not much else. Whereas your granddad has a great blend. You know, he'll ask you stuff and then say exactly the right things to keep you talking about it, and then say something himself. It is actually like when you see him in action, you just don't know how he does it. It's impressive.
It's one of those situations where he's a very good example of when you watch him, you realize what people mean when they say conversation is an art form.
Yeah, and he's
because
nailed
he's
it.
just got it down to a T. And I think maybe if you do say that I am slightly more like quote natural with conversation, I'll probably get it from him.
Yep. And again, like he's obviously had they're learned skills.
Yeah.
But they're learned very well in some cases.
Yeah, definitely.
Has to be said.
Definitely. But I mean, we are going to have to wrap this one up because we're now on a tight time frame because we have to get to work in a minute.
So these are becoming very, very quick fire podcasts.
Yes.
Especially when we faff in the morning.
We faff so much. But I think the main takeaways from this very weird, mishmashy, bad example of conversation today.
Yes. Is this podcast the art of conversation, or is this just a brief communication difficulties? Exhibit A. right there, that sentence.
But I think the main takeaway points we kind of want you to take away from this podcast episode is, remember, not everyone is great at conversation, but the main basic art of conversation is listening and asking questions. Yes, a huge amount of it does depend on your conversation partner. Like I said, it's like doing a tango. It does take two to take, like, it takes two to tango.
But it only takes one person to go blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, pretty much. Which, when you think about it, is what conversation is.
So in terms of asking questions, I've read, like, in a book, so this is not reading on the internet, this is reading on a book, that when you ask someone questions, they actually feel like, that you ask them questions and they talk about themselves, they feel like they're good friends with you.
Yeah.
Which is...
It puts them at ease.
It does, yeah. And that's them talking about themselves, not you talking about yourself and them getting to know you.
Yeah.
If you make someone feel like you're getting to know them, they like you more.
Yes.
And that's like an actual psychological thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's a good way to do it. Good way to get people to like you.
I feel like that's a different topic for a different day. But on that note, we are going to have to wrap it up because we do have to go to work in a minute because we're functioning adults, apparently.
And we need to shower.
Yes, because we're functioning adults.
Whereas before we were functioning adults, we never showered.
Anyway, trying to rev up this podcast episode.
Which I'm making quite difficult.
You really are. Please.
It's the conversation. I'm not very good at it. I just keep talking.
Please. Let me finish. As always, thank you very much for listening. If you are new here, we would love you to subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review. We do read all of the reviews and we love reading them. And as always, please let us know what sort of topics you want us to cover in the future. If you would like to follow this podcast on social media, it is It Just Us Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. You can then follow me personally on Instagram, which is that's_just_Emily.
Or me at that'sjusticejames_98.
And we will catch you guys next week for... I don't even know what we're talking about next week.
Give us some suggestions. Hit us up on Instagram or something. But we want to talk about stuff that you guys want to hear. So anyone out there, friends, family, or people who have just managed to stumble upon this podcast, just give us things you want to hear us talk about. Something where you're thinking, is it just me? And it won't be. It will be us as well. So we'll give it a good crack and see what we say.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll catch you guys next week.